The autumn rain fell in sheets across the Wyoming Territory, turning the dusty roads into rivers of mud and making travel treacherous for even the most experienced riders. Through this deluge, two women urged their exhausted horses toward the distant glow of lamplight that marked the Healing Springs Ranch. Their last hope in a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty since their husbands' deaths. Catherine Wells pulled her sodden cloak tighter around her shoulders, her once golden hair now darkened with rain and hanging in limp strands around her pale face. At 26, she had the kind of delicate beauty that belonged in drawing rooms and ballrooms, not fleeing through the wilderness on a half-starved mare. Her hands, once soft and pampered, were now calloused from months of desperate labor, and her blue eyes held a haunted quality that spoke of losses too great to bear. Beside her, Margaret Maggie O'Brien sat straighter in her saddle despite the storm, her Irish stubbornness refusing to let the elements defeat her. At 28, she was taller and stronger than Catherine, with auburn hair that even the rain couldn't completely tame, and green eyes that still held flashes of the fire that had carried her from the slums of Boston to the frontier. Her clothes were simpler, more practical, but no less soaked than her companions. "There," Catherine gasped, pointing through the rain toward the cluster of buildings ahead. "That has to be it." The Healing Springs Ranch was unlike any ranch either woman had ever seen. The main house was a sprawling two-story structure built of local stone and timber, with wide porches and large windows that glowed warmly in the storm. But it was the other buildings that made it unique. What looked like a small hospital, several cottages that seemed designed for long-term residents, and gardens that even in the autumn rain showed signs of careful cultivation. As they approached, a tall figure emerged from the main house, seemingly unbothered by the downpour. Even through the rain, they could see he was a large man, easily 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and the kind of presence that commanded attention. He wore a simple shirt and pants, both soaked through, but he moved with the confident stride of a man comfortable in his own domain. "Ladies," he called out, his voice carrying easily over the storm, "get yourselves inside before you catch your death." Catherine nearly fell from her saddle, her legs shaking with exhaustion and cold. The man, who could only be Dr. James Whitmore, the owner of this unusual ranch, caught her easily, his strong arm steadying her with gentle care. "Easy there," he murmured, his voice warm with concern. "You're safe now." Up close, Catherine could see that Dr. Whitmore was perhaps 35, with dark hair that curled slightly when wet and brown eyes that held an unusual combination of strength and compassion. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with lines around his eyes, and a mouth that looked like it smiled often. But it was his hands that caught her attention, large and capable, but with the careful precision of a surgeon. Maggie dismounted more steadily, though she swayed slightly on her feet. "Dr. Whitmore?" she asked, her Irish accent still faintly coloring her words despite years in America. "That's right. And you ladies are Mrs. Wells and Mrs. O'Brien, if I'm not mistaken." He gestured toward the house. "Come inside where it's warm. My men will see to your horses." The interior of the house was as impressive as the exterior. Comfortable furniture arranged around a massive stone fireplace, bookshelves lining the walls, and an overall sense of peace that both women felt immediately. A Mexican woman appeared with blankets and hot coffee, her motherly face creased with concern. "Senora Rosa will get you some dry clothes," Dr. Whitmore said, settling into a chair across from where they huddled by the fire. "But first, tell me what brings two ladies out in weather like this. Your telegram was rather urgent." Catherine looked at Maggie, silently asking her to take the lead. Maggie had always been better with words, more comfortable dealing with authority figures. "Dr. Whitmore," Maggie began, her voice steady despite their circumstances. "We're widows, both of us. Our husbands died in a mine collapse 8 months ago, and we've been trying to survive on our own ever since. The Copper Creek disaster, Dr. Whitmore said quietly. I remember reading about it. 12 men killed when the supports gave way. 12 good men, Catherine whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Including our husbands. Dr. Whitmore's expression grew gentle. I'm sorry for your losses, but that doesn't explain why you've come to me, or why you're fleeing through a storm. Maggie's hands clenched in her lap. After the funeral, we thought we'd be all right. We both had some savings, and the mining company promised compensation for the families. But the company went bankrupt. The compensation never came. And our savings, well, they don't last long when you're trying to support yourself in a mining town. We tried everything, Catherine added, her voice barely above a whisper. I took in sewing. Maggie worked at the general store. But it wasn't enough. And the town began to see us differently. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward, his brown eyes intent. Differently how? 2 young widows, with no male protection, Maggie said bitterly. You can imagine what certain men began to assume about our availability. Catherine shuddered, remembering the increasingly bold advances, the assumption that widowed women were fair game for any man's desires. It got worse when we couldn't pay our rent. The landlord, Mr. Hutchins, he said we could work off what we owed, but the kind of work he had in mind. We refused, Maggie said firmly. So he threw us out, put our belongings in the street, and told the whole town we were ungrateful whores who thought we were too good for honest work. Dr. Whitmore's jaw tightened with anger. And then? Then the other offers started coming, Catherine said, her voice hollow. Men who said they'd take care of us, give us a place to live, in exchange for services. When we refused those too, things got dangerous. Maggie's green eyes flashed with remembered fury. 3 nights ago, a group of men tried to force their way into the abandoned cabin where we'd been staying. They said if we wouldn't accept their generous offers, they'd take what they wanted anyway. We managed to get away, Catherine continued, but barely. We took what we could carry and rode out in the middle of the night. We'd heard about your ranch, about how you help people who have nowhere else to turn. Dr. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, studying their faces with the careful attention of a man accustomed to reading pain and trauma. What exactly have you heard about my ranch? That you're a doctor who treats more than just physical ailments, Maggie said carefully. That you help people heal from other kinds of wounds. That you take in people who are broken and help them become whole again, Catherine added softly. Dr. Whitmore stood and walked to the window, looking out at the storm-lashed landscape. This ranch is indeed a place of healing, he said finally. I founded it 5 years ago after I realized that traditional medicine only treats part of what ails people. The body can heal while the spirit remains wounded, and a wounded spirit can destroy even the healthiest body. He turned back to face them, his expression serious. I help people recover from trauma, from loss, from the kind of deep wounds that don't show on the surface. But my methods are unconventional. Unconventional how? Maggie asked. I believe that healing requires trust, vulnerability, and often human connection of the most intimate kind. I don't just treat my patients, I become part of their recovery process. Catherine felt her cheeks warm. I'm not sure I understand. Dr. Whitmore returned to his chair, his brown eyes gentle but direct. Ladies, you've both suffered tremendous losses. Your husband's deaths, your financial ruin, the betrayal of your community, these are wounds that go far deeper than physical injury. They've damaged your ability to trust, to feel safe, to believe in your own worth. That's true, Catherine admitted quietly. Traditional medicine would prescribe rest, perhaps some laudanum for your nerves, and send you on your way. But that wouldn't heal the real damage, would it? You'd still be 2 traumatized women trying to survive in a world that sees you as prey. Maggie leaned forward. What are you proposing? I'm proposing that you stay here as my guest for as long as it takes to truly heal, not just from your recent trauma, but from all the wounds life has inflicted on you. I'll provide for all your needs: food, shelter, clothing, safety. In return, you'll allow me to help you rediscover who you are beneath the pain. And what would that involve? Catherine asked, though something in his tone made her pulse quicken. Dr. Whitmore's smile was warm but knowing. It would involve learning to trust again, to feel safe in your own bodies, to believe that you deserve love and care and pleasure. It would involve allowing me to show you that not all men are predators, that intimacy can be healing rather than harmful. The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Catherine felt her breath catch, while Maggie's eyes widened with understanding. You're talking about, Maggie began. I'm talking about comprehensive healing, Dr. Whitmore said gently. Physical, emotional, and yes, sexual. You've both been traumatized by men who saw you as objects to be used. Part of your healing will involve learning that physical intimacy can be beautiful, consensual, and restorative. Catherine's face burned with embarrassment, but she couldn't deny the flutter of something that might have been interest. It had been so long since a man had looked at her with anything other than predatory hunger. This is highly irregular, Maggie said, though her voice lacked conviction. Healing often is, Dr. Whitmore replied. But I've seen the results, ladies. I've helped dozens of people recover from trauma that traditional medicine couldn't touch. Women who'd been abused, men who'd been broken by war, people who'd lost everything and everyone they loved. And they all participated in this kind of treatment? Catherine asked. Only those who chose to. Healing can't be forced, ladies. It requires willing participation, trust, and genuine desire for recovery. His brown eyes moved between them. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. Stay here, rest, recover your strength. Get to know me, learn about what I do here. If you decide this isn't for you, I'll help you find another solution to your problems. And if we decide it is for us? Maggie asked quietly. Dr. Whitmore's smile was gentle and infinitely reassuring. Then I'll dedicate myself to helping you heal completely. Body, mind and spirit. I'll teach you to trust again, to feel safe again, to believe in your own worth and beauty. And yes, I'll show you that physical love can be a source of healing rather than harm. Catherine looked at Maggie, seeing her own conflicted emotions reflected in her friend's face. The proposal was shocking, unconventional, and completely outside anything they'd ever imagined. But it was also the first offer of genuine help they'd received since their husbands' deaths. We need time to think, Catherine said, finally. Of course, Signora Rosa will show you to your rooms. Rest, eat, recover from your journey. We can talk more tomorrow when you're feeling stronger. As they followed the kindly Mexican woman upstairs, Catherine's mind reeled with possibilities. This man, this doctor, was offering them something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope, not just for survival, but for genuine healing, for the possibility of feeling whole again. Behind her, she heard Dr. Whitmore speaking quietly to someone, making arrangements for their care. His voice was warm, concerned, protective, so different from the harsh demands and crude propositions they'd endured in recent months. For the first time since her husband's death, Catherine Wells dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward that didn't involve simply enduring whatever cruelties the world chose to inflict on her. Catherine woke to sunlight streaming through lace curtains and the sound of birds singing outside her window. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The bed was too comfortable, the room too peaceful, the absence of fear too complete. Then memory returned. The storm, their desperate flight, Dr. Whitmore's extraordinary offer. She rose and looked out the window, gasping at the view. The Healing Springs Ranch spread out below her like something from a dream. Gardens bloomed with late-season flowers, paths wound between carefully tended plots of herbs and vegetables, and in the distance, she could see the natural hot springs that gave the ranch its name. People moved about the grounds, with purpose but without haste. Some tending gardens, others walking the paths, all seeming to radiate a sense of peace she hadn't seen in months. A soft knock interrupted her observations. "Come in," she called, expecting Senora Rosa with breakfast. Instead, Dr. Whitmore entered carrying a tray laden with coffee, fresh bread, and what looked like eggs from the ranch's own chickens. He'd changed from his rain-soaked clothes into clean pants and a white shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders and strong arms. "Good morning, Catherine," he said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months," she admitted, pulling her robe tighter around herself. In the morning light, Dr. Whitmore was even more handsome than she'd remembered, and she was acutely aware of being alone with him in her bedroom. "That's the first sign of healing," he said with a gentle smile, "when the body finally feels safe enough to truly rest." He gestured toward the window. "What do you think of our little community?" Catherine looked out again at the peaceful scene below. "It's beautiful, but I have to ask, are all these people patients? People you're treating?" Dr. Whitmore's expression grew thoughtful. "Some are current patients, yes. Others are former patients who chose to stay and help with the work here. And some are simply people who needed a place to belong." He paused. "Healing isn't always about leaving, Catherine. Sometimes it's about finding where you truly belong. And Maggie, how is she this morning?" "Restless," Dr. Whitmore said with a chuckle. "She's already been down to the kitchens helping Senora Rosa with breakfast, and I suspect she'll have reorganized my entire medical supply room by noon. She's a woman who needs to feel useful." Catherine smiled, recognizing her friend's need to stay busy when anxious. "She's always been that way. Even when we were both married, she couldn't sit still if there was work to be done." "Tell me about your marriages," Dr. Whitmore said, settling into the chair across from her. "What were your husbands like?" The question caught Catherine off guard. Most people avoided mentioning her late husband, as if speaking of the dead was somehow improper. "Thomas was, kind," she said slowly. "Gentle. He treated me like I was made of spun glass, something precious that might break if handled roughly." "And did you like being treated that way?" Catherine considered the question. "I thought I did. It felt safe, protected. But looking back..." She paused, struggling to articulate something she'd never put into words. "Sometimes I felt more like a beautiful object he owned than a woman he loved." Dr. Whitmore nodded encouragingly. "What about physical intimacy? Were you happy in that aspect of your marriage?" Catherine's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Dr. Whitmore, that's hardly appropriate." "Catherine," he said gently, "if you're going to heal completely, we need to discuss all aspects of your life, including the intimate ones. There's nothing shameful about physical love between husband and wife." She looked down at her hands, remembering her wedding night and the awkward, brief encounters that had followed. "Thomas was considerate. He never hurt me or forced me, but it was always very quick, very mechanical. He said ladies weren't supposed to enjoy such things, that it was a duty wives performed for their husbands. And did you believe that?" "I didn't know any different," Catherine admitted. "My mother never spoke of such things except to say that marriage had certain obligations that good wives endured." Dr. Whitmore's expression grew sad. "Oh, Catherine, you've been cheated of one of life's greatest pleasures. Physical love between caring partners should be joyful, passionate, mutually satisfying. The idea that women don't enjoy intimacy is not only wrong, it's harmful." Catherine felt something flutter in her chest. Curiosity, perhaps, or the faint stirring of desires she'd never acknowledged. "You really believe that?" "I know it," Dr. Whitmore said firmly. "I've helped many women discover the truth about their own capacity for pleasure. It's one of the most rewarding aspects of my work." Before Catherine could respond, another knock sounded at the door. This time it was Maggie, looking more rested than she had in months, but still carrying the tension that had become her constant companion. "Good morning," Maggie said, her eyes moving between Catherine and Dr. Whitmore with obvious curiosity. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Dr. Whitmore said, rising. "I was just getting to know Catherine better. Please join us." Maggie settled into the remaining chair, accepting the cup of coffee Dr. Whitmore poured for her. "I've been exploring your ranch this morning, Doctor. It's quite remarkable." "What did you think of it?" "Everyone seems so peaceful," Maggie said. "Content. I spoke with several of your residents, and they all speak of you with something approaching reverence." Dr. Whitmore looked uncomfortable. "I hope not reverence. Respect, perhaps, or gratitude. But I'm just a man trying to help people heal." "Are you?" Maggie's green eyes were sharp, assessing. "Because some of the things I heard—" "Dr. Whitmore, are you intimate with all your female patients?" Catherine gasped at her friend's directness, but Dr. Whitmore didn't seem offended. "That's a fair question, and you deserve an honest answer. No, I'm not intimate with all my patients. Intimacy is only one tool in my arsenal, and it's only used when it's appropriate for the patient's specific trauma, and when the patient genuinely desires it." "And how do you determine that?" Maggie pressed. "Through careful observation, honest conversation, and gradual building of trust. I never pressure anyone, Maggie. The decision to include physical intimacy in treatment is always made by the patient, not by me." Catherine found her voice. "But you have been intimate with some of your patients?" "Yes," Dr. Whitmore said simply, "when it was what they needed for healing, and when it was what they truly wanted. I've helped women who were terrified of men's touch learn to enjoy physical affection again. I've shown women who thought they were frigid that they're capable of great passion. I've taught women who saw their bodies as sources of shame to see them as sources of strength and pleasure." Maggie leaned forward. "And what about you? Don't you risk becoming attached to these women?" Dr. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. "I care deeply for everyone I treat, Maggie. How could I not? But I'm also a professional. I understand the difference between therapeutic intimacy and romantic love." "Do you?" Catherine asked softly. "Because it seems like it would be very easy to blur those lines." Dr. Whitmore's brown eyes met hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths. Vulnerability, perhaps, or longing. "You're right. It would be easy. And I'll admit, there have been times when I've had to examine my own motivations very carefully." "What do you mean?" Maggie asked. Dr. Whitmore stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I mean that sometimes a patient comes along who challenges everything I think I know about the boundaries between healing and loving." Catherine felt her pulse quicken. "Are you saying that's happened recently?" Dr. Whitmore turned back to face them, his expression serious. "I'm saying that from the moment you two rode into my ranch last night, I've had to question whether my desire to help you is purely professional." The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility and danger. Catherine felt her breath catch, while Maggie's eyes widened with understanding. "Dr. Whitmore," Maggie said carefully, "are you saying you're attracted to us?" "I'm saying I'm attracted to your strength, your resilience, your refusal to be broken by circumstances that would have destroyed lesser women. I'm saying that when I look at you both, I see not just patients who need healing, but women I could genuinely care for." Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. "That complicates things, doesn't it?" "It does," Dr. Whitmore admitted, "which is why I want to be completely honest with you both. If you choose to stay here, if you choose to let me help you heal, it won't be just about therapeutic treatment. It will be about genuine connection, real intimacy, and yes, the possibility of something deeper than a doctor-patient relationship. Maggie stood abruptly, pacing to the window with quick, agitated steps. This is madness. We came here seeking help, and you're proposing… What exactly? I'm proposing that we explore the possibility that healing and loving don't have to be mutually exclusive, Dr. Whitmore said quietly. I'm proposing that maybe what you both need isn't just a doctor, but a man who can show you that you're worthy of love, protection, and genuine care. Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes. We barely know you. Then let's get to know each other, Dr. Whitmore replied. Stay here, not as patients, but as women exploring the possibility of something beautiful. Let me court you properly, show you what it means to be cherished rather than used. Both of us? Maggie asked, turning from the window. Dr. Whitmore's smile was gentle but sure. Both of you, your friends, partners in survival. I wouldn't dream of separating you or asking either of you to choose between friendship and love. Catherine stared at him, certain she'd misheard. You're talking about loving both of us? I'm talking about opening our hearts to whatever develops naturally, Dr. Whitmore said. Maybe it will be friendship. Maybe it will be something deeper. But whatever it is, it will be honest, consensual, and healing for all of us. The proposal was shocking, unconventional, and completely outside anything either woman had ever imagined. But as Catherine looked at this man who was offering them not just safety, but the possibility of genuine love, she felt something she hadn't experienced since her husband's death. Hope for a future that included more than just survival. 3 weeks later, Catherine stood in the herb garden behind the main house, her hands deep in the rich soil as she helped harvest the last of the season's medicinal plants. The work was satisfying in a way she'd never experienced, purposeful, connected to the earth and the cycle of growth and renewal that seemed to define everything about the Healing Springs Ranch. The chamomile is particularly good this year, Dr. Whitmore, James, as he'd asked them to call him, said as he worked beside her. Senora Rosa will be pleased. She uses it in her tea blend for the patients with anxiety. Catherine smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face with the back of her wrist. I never knew there was so much science behind healing herbs. In town, we just bought patent medicines from the general store. Most of which did more harm than good, James replied with a chuckle. Nature provides everything we need for healing, if we know how to use it properly. Over the past 3 weeks, Catherine had learned that James Whitmore was a man of many talents. He was indeed a trained physician, educated at Harvard Medical School, but he'd also studied with native healers, herbalists, and practitioners of what he called holistic medicine. His approach to healing encompassed not just the body, but the mind and spirit as well. More importantly, she'd learned that he was a man of his word. Despite his unconventional proposal, he'd been nothing but respectful and patient with both her and Maggie. He'd courted them with old-fashioned gentility, bringing them flowers from his gardens, sharing meals and conversation, taking long walks around the ranch where they talked about everything from literature to philosophy to their dreams for the future. Catherine, James said quietly, his voice taking on the gentle tone he used when he wanted to discuss something important. How are you feeling? Really feeling, not just the polite answer you give when others ask. Catherine considered the question as she continued working. It was something James did regularly, checked in with her emotional state, encouraged her to examine her feelings honestly. Better, she said finally. Stronger. For the first time since Thomas died, I feel like I'm more than just a victim of circumstances. What's changed? Catherine paused in her work, looking around at the peaceful ranch. at the people moving about their daily tasks with purpose and contentment. I feel useful here, valued, not just for what I can provide to others, but for who I am as a person. James smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. That's exactly what I hoped would happen. You're discovering your own worth, independent of your role as someone's wife or someone's object of desire. Is that part of the healing process? It's the foundation of it, James said seriously. Until you believe in your own value, you can't truly heal from the trauma of being treated as worthless. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn sun warm on their backs. Catherine found herself stealing glances at James, admiring the way his shirt stretched across his broad shoulders, the careful precision of his hands as he worked. Over the past weeks, she'd become increasingly aware of him as a man, not just as a healer. "James," she said suddenly, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Have you ever been married? Had a family of your own?" James's hands stilled in their work, and Catherine saw a shadow cross his face. "I was engaged once back in Boston. A lovely woman from a good family. Everything my parents thought I should want. What happened? I realized that I was more in love with the idea of her than with her as a person. And she couldn't understand why I wanted to come west, why I was more interested in helping broken people than in building a fashionable practice treating wealthy hypochondriacs." Catherine felt a pang of sympathy for this man who had given up conventional success to follow his calling. "Do you ever regret it?" "Never," James said firmly. "This work, this place, these people, this is where I belong. This is where I can make a real difference." "And you've never wanted a family of your own?" James looked at her directly, his brown eyes intense. "I've wanted it, but I've never found women who could understand and accept what I do here, who could be true partners in this work." "Until now?" Catherine asked softly. "Until now," James confirmed, his voice warm with possibility. Before Catherine could respond, Maggie appeared around the corner of the garden, her face flushed with excitement. "James, Catherine, you need to come quickly. We have visitors." They hurried to the front of the house, where Catherine's heart sank at the sight of 3 men on horseback. She recognized them immediately. Mr. Hutchins, their former landlord, along with 2 other men from Copper Creek. "Dr. Whitmore," Hutchins called out, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to getting his way. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." James stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert. Catherine noticed that several of his ranch hands had appeared from various buildings, their presence casual but their attention focused. "Mr. Hutchins, isn't it?" James said pleasantly. "I'm afraid I don't understand. Nothing here belongs to you." "Those 2 women," Hutchins said, pointing at Catherine and Maggie. "They ran off owing me money, and I've come to collect what's owed." "I see," James replied, his voice still pleasant, but with an edge of steel beneath the courtesy. "And what exactly do they owe you?" 3 months' rent, plus damages to my property. Comes to about $200. Catherine gasped. "That's a lie. We paid our rent every month until you threw us out." "You calling me a liar, woman?" Hutchins snarled, his face reddening with anger. "I'm calling you exactly what you are," Maggie said, stepping forward with her chin raised defiantly. "A man who tried to force us into prostitution to pay debts we didn't owe." One of the other men, a rough-looking character Catherine didn't recognize, laughed crudely. "Prostitution? Hell, we were offering to make honest women of you. Not our fault you thought you were too good for decent men." James's demeanor changed instantly, the pleasant facade dropping away to reveal something far more dangerous. "Gentlemen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. These ladies are under my protection now, and they're not going anywhere." "Your protection?" Hutchins sneered. "What are you, some kind of fancy pimp?" Running a high-class whorehouse out here in the wilderness. The insult hung in the air like a challenge. Catherine saw James's hands clench into fists, saw the way his ranch hands moved closer, their own hands moving toward their weapons. "Mr. Hutchins," James said, his voice deadly quiet, "I'm going to give you one chance to apologize for that remark and ride away peacefully." "Or what?" the third man challenged, his hand moving to his gun. "Or I'll demonstrate why it's unwise to threaten people under my protection," James replied calmly. Catherine had never seen this side of James before, the dangerous man beneath the gentle healer. But instead of frightening her, it made her feel safer than she had in months. "These women are my guests," James continued, "and they'll remain my guests for as long as they choose. If you have legitimate debts to collect, you can take the matter up with the territorial courts, but you will not harass them, threaten them, or make any further demands on them." Hutchins' face was purple with rage. "You can't just steal another man's property." "Property?" James's voice was like ice. "Did you just refer to these ladies as property?" "That's what they are," Hutchins snarled. "Whores who owe me money, and I'll collect one way or another." What happened next was so fast Catherine barely saw it. James moved with the fluid grace of a trained fighter, covering the distance to Hutchins' horse in 3 quick strides. Before the older man could react, James had dragged him from the saddle and thrown him to the ground. "You will apologize to these ladies," James said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Or you will deal with me." Hutchins scrambled to his feet, his hand moving toward his gun, but found himself facing not just James, but half a dozen armed ranch hands who had appeared as if from nowhere. "This isn't over," Hutchins snarled, backing toward his horse. "Those women belong to me, and I'll have them back." "No," James said quietly. "They belong to themselves, and they've chosen to stay here, with me." As the 3 men rode away, hurling threats and curses, James turned to Catherine and Maggie, his expression immediately softening with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his hands gentle as he checked them for any sign of distress. "We're fine," Catherine said, though her voice shook slightly. "But James, they'll be back. Men like that don't give up easily." "Let them come," James replied, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. "This is your home now, if you want it to be, and I protect what's mine." Catherine looked up into his brown eyes, seeing not just the gentle healer she'd come to care for, but the strong man who would fight for her, protect her, love her. In that moment, she made her decision. "Yes," she said softly. "This is our home, and we're yours if you'll have us." James's smile was brilliant as he pulled both women into his embrace. "Then let's make it official," he said. "Let's heal together, love together, and build something beautiful together." As the sun set over the Healing Springs Ranch, Catherine felt the last of her old wounds finally beginning to close. She was no longer a desperate widow fleeing from predators. She was a woman choosing love, choosing healing, choosing a future filled with possibility. And for the first time since her husband's death, Catherine Wells was truly, completely happy.